How's it going everybody, my name's Luke and welcome to this ultimate boss guide for Bladed Fury, where we're going to be taking a look at each one of the game's bosses, breaking down all of the movesets and seeing exactly how you can beat their asses down without taking too many hits. If you're struggling with a particular boss, then you can quickly jump to their guide using the timestamps in this video's description. Now before we start, I'm going to be going over a few points to know. Firstly, as you've probably already noticed, each boss has a health bar with 3 layers. Each of these layers represents a boss phase, and in each new phase, boss attacks become more complex and some bosses gain new attacks. In this guide, we're going to be taking a look at what you can expect from each boss in each of the phases, though you will actually skip phase 3 for a few of the bosses, as the strategies in this guide will usually see you bypassing them altogether. Now we also won't be using parries for any of the bosses for 2 reasons. Firstly, if you're playing on Nintendo Switch, it suffers from awful screen freezes which really cause issues with the timing of parries, and secondly because hitboxes can be a little funky and many of them require to be stood in specific locations. It's worth noting that the bosses don't really change much between normal and hard mode, and the main differences with most of them is that the fights begin at phase 2, so this guide can be used for either difficulty. So now let's take a look at the skills which will increase your efficiency in each boss fight, and we'll start with 3 skills for the Twin Blades Fiendbane. The first of these skills that you want to pick up is Sidestep, which is essential for most boss fights as it allows you dashes and blocks to instantly stop your attack mid-combo. Next we have Twister 2, which increases the damage of your Twister attack, and this will speed up a couple of the earlier bosses. And finally we have Shadow Strike 1 and 2, which aren't really necessary but do speed up the killing of some bosses if you're confident with your parries. Moving on to your secondary weapon, the Crimson Mass, we only actually really need the Sunstrike ability for a couple of boss strategies, but Starshine is also useful as it massively buffs your armor whilst you're charging Sunstrike, and also enables your dashes and blocks to interrupt your Crimson Mass combos. Finally, moving on to passive upgrades, the main one here is Evasion, which grants you a second dash ability, but you can also pick up Aegis 2, which reduces the damage you take from broken blocks, and Precision Strike 2, which allows your parries to reflect projectiles back at enemies. And that's about it for this introduction section, so let's now get into our first boss fight. So first up we have this big fat glutton demon, aka your father Duke Kang, who unsurprisingly is the easiest boss in the game, and throughout this fight you're going to want to remain on the right hand side of him. Now his first phase moveset consists of 2 attacks. Firstly, he throws a punch which can only hit you if you're on the left side of him or close up to him on the right, and you just need to step a little out from his right hand side to avoid this. His second attack is a floor swipe which kicks up a bunch of black tar, and he will perform this attack towards whatever side you're standing on, but it's easily avoided with a quick dodge or a jump. Now each time you reduce his health bar to 0, he'll perform a phase change attack where he dives into the floor and sends sprays of tar up from the ground. There is a different pattern on each of the phases, but they're always the same and can be easily avoided with a dodge. The boss's second phase introduces a new ground slam attack, but his first 2 attacks don't change, and this new attack can also be avoided with a jump. And the final boss phase introduces one more attack, where he gathers up a bunch of oil in his hands and then slams it down on the ground. This causes 2 patches of oil to shoot up from the ground one after another, and you just need to perform a quick dodge towards the boss after the first spout. And that's about it for Duke Kang, so now let's see an example of the boss fight in full. So next up we have the first of two encounters with General Wu, and things become a bit more complex with this boss, but he's still a bit of a pushover. Now in his first phase he only has two attacks, the first of these being a double swipe in your direction with his sword, which can be avoided with a quick dash, and his second attack sees him drawing his sword and stabbing it into the ground, creating a cloud of red smoke, and you just need to jump above his head to avoid this. Now once we transition into the boss's second phase, he'll dash to the side of the screen and send out two red energy waves from his sword, and this attack will occur throughout the second and third phases, with the third phase version adding an extra wave of energy. To avoid this attack, you simply need to run at the boss, perform a jump and dash to get over his head, and this will provide you with an opportunity to attack him from behind. General Wu's final attack, which you'll encounter during his third phase, sees him charging up dark energy for a couple of seconds before releasing a burst of it, and you just need to run or dodge away from him to avoid taking damage from it. And that's about it for General Wu, so now let's see how it's done in real time. So back for round 2 we have the undead version of General Wu, and this guy's attacks are pretty much souped up versions of his attacks in the first battle, plus a couple of new ones. In his first phase, all of his sword attacks send out waves of red energy, which like before can be avoided by dashing over or through him, or you can choose to deflect them back at him with your Crimson Mass to stun him for a few seconds. He no longer has the ground stab attack in this fight, but he does have a more powerful version of his dash attack which will cause damage if he runs into you. Now his first new attack, which you'll see from phase 1, sees him drawing some blue flames out of his body, after which one of two attacks can occur. The first causes 3 meteors to fall from the sky, which you can easily dodge through, though these can appear off screen making it a little difficult sometimes, and the second sends out a pair of hands from either side of the screen which you can also dodge through or jump over. When he moves into phase 2, his attacks will speed up a little, and he gains one additional ability, a black hole which will draw you towards it, but it will not deal damage to you. The black hole will remain active until the bosses perform 2 dash attacks at you, and you can get a few hits in between these attacks. General Wu's third phase is identical to phase 2, except for one additional sword swipe and energy wave. And that's about it for Zombie General Wu, so let's take a look at the fight in full. Now after travelling to the villa where you have to find keystones which you put in this map thing to unlock rooms, after obtaining your second keystone you're then able to get to the game's fourth boss, but before that you're going to want to head to this room and take out the Archer sub-boss as you obtain a new soul sliver from him which deals damage by raining arrows down on enemies. This sub-boss is relatively easy but he does jump all over the place, and the best method for taking him down is to get in close with the Crimson Mask to remove his shield before laying into him with some quick combos. So after obtaining and equipping the Arrow Rain Soul Sliver, it's on to boss number 4, the Animorph known as Xia Zhengshu, and he's a little tougher than the previous bosses. In his first phase he has 4 attacks, the first of these being a straightforward 3-strike combo, and you can dodge through the first strike and attack him from behind. The second is a charged block breaker which once more can be easily dodged. His third attack sees him summoning 2 lanterns which will explode a few seconds after making contact with you, and you just need to wait next to the boss and perform a dodge as soon as they stop on top of you. The boss's final attack in phase 1 has him whip out his staff and give it a spin, and he's immune to all damage during this, so you just want to wait until he puts it away. Now moving into his second phase, a couple of attacks change. His 3-hit combo has an added 4th unblockable hit at the end of it which you're going to want to dodge through, and after he's done spinning his staff around he'll then launch a fireball towards you which you can jump over, but everything else remains the same. Now his third phase retains the 2 previous changes, and he also changes up his charged block breaker attack as he now performs 2 of them in a row followed by a standard attack. In addition to this, he also gets a new jump maneuver where he either slams down into the ground or launches a volley of fireballs at you, both of which are relatively easy to avoid. And that's about all there is to know about boss number 4, so let's take a look at an example of the fight in full. Boss number 5 is found at the end of the villa's level, and she's called Wen, a creepy looking spider woman and ex-lover of our Animorph friend. Now Wen's fight is one of the simplest in the game, as her attacks don't change much between phases and she only has 2 of them. Prior to performing the first of these, she lets out a cloud of poisonous gas which will damage you, so just dash away from her, and after this she'll have a bit of a laugh, pop out some razor sharp mandibles and proceed to charge towards you several times in a row. This attack is actually very easy to dodge out of the way of, but it's tough to actually hit her while she's doing this, and in her second and third phases her movement speed will increase, and a couple of additional charges are added to this attack. Wen's second attack sees her crawling up to the top left or top right corner of the room, where she'll then charge up 3 attacks in a row, each one spitting out several green projectiles. The best tactic to use against this attack is to dodge through the first set of projectiles from the centre of the room, which should then allow you to avoid the second, and hopping beneath the third set onto the platform should give you a brief moment to get some hits in. Now the only other thing you need to be concerned about in this fight is Wen's phase transition, where she disappears off screen and drops 3 paintings down which spawn these floating head enemies. You just need to smash these as fast as you can and dispatch of the heads, and a charged sunshine attack with the Crimson Mask can be used to take out 2 of them at once, providing you're positioned close to the outside edge of the platforms. Overall, Wen is a bit of a pushover, so let's now see how a full fight against her goes. Moving on to boss 6, we get to face the formidable 4-armed Bogu, and here's where things step up a notch in terms of boss difficulty and dynamics. Bogu has 5 different attacks that she can perform in a first phase, all of which can break your blocks. The first of these is a straight jab attack where she'll launch herself across the screen towards you. The second is a ground pound where she slams a fist through the wooden floor and tosses a bunch of it in your direction. And the third, which is indicated by a red warning symbol, is a grab attack where she'll grip you by the throat and punch you across the screen. Now all 3 of these moves can be avoided by dodging through her just before she strikes, but be careful with the grab attack as she can still grab you if you stand too close behind her after you dodge. For her 4th attack, Bogu will leap high into the air and a second later will slam down on top of you. To dodge this, wait until the shadow moves over the top of you, then dash to either side of it. Bogu's 5th and final attack sees her charging up energy within her arms, after which she'll release 2 beams of energy to either side of her, and this is a hard hitting attack, but it can be easily dodged by performing a jump and then an air combo to keep you up out of the way. Now Bogu doesn't get any new attacks in phase 2 or 3, but each of her existing attacks change, becoming more powerful, and they're performed more quickly, meaning you need to perform your dodges sooner. Her slam attack now has a wider range and it's best to jump and dodge to avoid this one, and when you face the hard mode version of Bogu in phase 3 she'll perform multiple jump slams in a row. In her second and third phases Bogu's beam attack also changes and she now fires 4 beams of energy, 2 of which quickly close together. Once again this is easily avoided though by jumping above her and performing 2 air attacks before stopping the combo to drop down between the 2 closing beams. One final thing to note about Bogu is after you defeat her she'll perform a final dying attack where she charges across the room and tries to jump on you before exploding, so you just need to run as far away from her as you can or jump over her if this is not possible. And that's about as much as there is to say about Bogu, so let's check out a complete example fight against her. Boss Fight 7 takes us to the palace of the Emperor of Zhou. In my opinion this is undoubtedly the most annoying of all boss fights, as he's a massive wimp who takes shelter in a huge golden mask which protects him from damage throughout the fight. Fortunately the Emperor's attacks are about as pathetic as he is, and while he does have a large variety of attacks, none of them really pose much of a threat. Now his first attack sees him launching 2 fireballs at you, one after another, and the larger of the 2 will detonate, creating an area of damage as well as shooting flames upwards. These can be easily dodged with some quick dashes just before they land, but if you've unlocked the Precision Strike 2 skill, you might want to also deflect them with a parry and counter attack. His next attack is indicated by a red warning symbol, and it sees him sending 2 jets of flame down from the mask which will move in your direction. Ensuring you have enough distance between you and the boss is key to avoiding this one. The Emperor's third attack causes spikes to pop out from the ground beneath you, but this is practically impossible to miss and you just need to perform a double jump to avoid these. Attack number 4 isn't really an attack as such, and instead the mask will scream, which will cause an additional enemy to spawn into the arena. On the hard mode version of the boss this causes 2 enemies to spawn. The boss's penultimate attack sees the mask shooting out jets of white steam in 8 directions, before it releases long blasts of steam which travel the full length of the screen, and you just need to position yourself between the beams to avoid them. Now each time the boss performs an attack, the mouth of the mask will open, exposing the Emperor for you to get a few digs in, but his real weakness lies in his little helpers positioned to either side of the screen. These guys will turn the cranks, causing the lanterns in the centre of the room to open up, and once they are fully open and glowing orange, the boss will move towards the centre of the room and perform a blinding light attack which fills the whole screen, and the only way to avoid this one is to quickly move to the far corner of the screen. Now, killing these two crank turners will not only result in the lanterns resetting, it'll also cause the boss to drop to the floor, giving you about 5 seconds to dish out some damage to him. The most efficient way of maximising this advantage is to kill off one of the lantern guys and then get the other to half health before using the arrow rain soul skill on him. You can then move and position yourself below the boss ready for him to drop before the arrow rain finishes off the second helper. And that's about all there is to say about the Emperor, so let's check out a full fight against him. Now, after beating the Emperor, you'll fall deep down into the underworld, where you'll face off against some tough enemies, one of these being this big headless bastard barring your way across the bridge. Now, he can be quite a tough fight if you choose to engage him in combat, but to make quick work of him, ensure you have all your 3 damage dealing soul slivers equipped, those being your arrow rain skill, the giant red cannon skill obtained from 4-armed Bogu, and the big flash skill from the Emperor boss, as well as the slowing soul skill from the spider boss. After Big Man does his little shield slam and his health bar pops up, you can then use all 4 skills on him one after another to strip his armour away and drop him to half health, which will be low enough for you to finish him off before the slow effect wears off. So after making your way through the underworld, you'll then come up against the Serpent boss, who in all honesty is one of the easier bosses, though like the spider boss he's a bit of a slippery bastard who moves around a lot. Now, the Serpent boss has 6 attacks, all of which are used throughout his 3 phases, with a couple of them having more advanced versions in phases 2 and 3. His first attack, which he always opens the fight with, is a soundwave attack which will knock you back. His second attack sees him slamming into the wall, dropping large stalactites from the ceiling, which you just need to dash out of the way of. He will occasionally destroy these stalactites using his soundwave attack, but he also has a quick bite attack which he can use to destroy them, though I found that he rarely uses this attack. Now, his next 2 attacks will only occur when the stalactites are still standing. The first of these sees the Serpent diving down into the lava, causing the screen to shake, after which the lava will rise up, destroying the lowest stalactites, so you just need to jump onto the highest one to avoid it. The second attack is this black smoke, which will cause fireballs to rain down from the sky, and you just need to stand beneath the centre of one of the stalactites to avoid this. You don't need to worry about the fact that the flames are still hitting you, as they won't cause any damage providing you're positioned correctly. The Serpent's final attack sees red tears falling from his eyes, which will cause pillars of fire to shoot up in the spot that you're standing on, and you just need to run or dash out of the way of these. Now, the boss's second and third phases are pretty much identical to his first, bar 2 minor changes. The first being that his lava attack will rise higher with each phase, destroying an additional stalactite, and in phase 3 the lava will destroy all of them, so you need to jump and perform an air combo once it reaches the largest stalactite. The second change is to his tears attack, and this just adds an additional lava pillar for each phase. Other than this though, there's not much to worry about, and you can finish off the boss quickly with a combo of soul skills as soon as he's down to his last health bar. With that said, it's time for another example fight. Now, following your victory over the Serpent, you'll eventually return to the palace in which the game began in preparation for the game's final boss. Before you can face it though, you have to solve this rotating ring puzzle and have to have rematches against 3 previously defeated bosses, these being the living version of General Wu that we faced in the game's second boss fight, our staff-wielding Animorph friend from the villa, and the quad-armed babe that is Bogu from the rooftop level. Now, all 3 of these fights are near identical to the first encounters with the bosses, bar a couple of minor changes. The General Wu fight has ceiling spikes which slowly descend above you, the Animorph calls in a couple of cleaver-wielding enemies to help him in phase 2, and Punchy Forearms has a huge spiked mallet hanging from the ceiling, but the nearby switch doesn't actually seem to do anything. Beating these 3 bosses for a second time is pretty easy, as you now have your wombo combo of soul abilities which you can use to instantly destroy them once they're down to the final health bar. Now, after completing your 3 boss gauntlet, it's time for the final showdown against Tian, but this guy is a mega pussy, and instead he summons one of your ancestors to do his dirty work, who is undoubtedly the toughest boss in the game. Now, Big Man has 3 attacks at his disposal in his first phase. The first of these sees him slamming his staff on the ground, which much like Bogu's ground pound results in the floor being ripped up and tossed towards you. His second attack is a 3-hit combo, in which he first swipes his staff at you, next performs a swift punch attack, before ending the combo with another ground pound. This one can be a little tricky to dodge, but you just need to dodge through him before each attack, getting in a couple of your own hits whilst his back is turned. The boss's third attack is by far the hardest to avoid as it happens so quickly. Basically, he charges up energy for about a second before releasing it in a circle around him, and you just need to dash away from him as soon as you see this happening, but more often than not you'll likely take a hit from this attack. Now, in his first phase, after he performs a total of 5 of these attacks, Big Man's 6th attack will always be a second charge up attack. This one draws you towards him, and after charging for about 2 seconds he'll perform a wide sweeping attack, so you're going to want to jump and perform an air combo to avoid this. Following this attack, the screen will darken and the boss will teleport to the centre of the room, becoming invincible, and he will then hold up a green flag which will cause 3 ghostly enemies to spawn. Now the easiest way to avoid these is to head to the far right of the screen once he raises his flag and then simply run all the way to the left. The attacks from the first two enemies will completely miss you, and then you just need to jump and perform an air combo to avoid the stampede of horses. The boss will then vanish once again, after which he'll reappear next to you and perform all three of his attacks, vanishing between each one of them, and his third attack will always be his charge attack. The arena will then lighten once more and his first phase will repeat, followed by another dark phase if for some reason you don't manage to damage him enough to enter phase 2, but you are able to completely skip the dark phase if you get lucky with the attacks in the first boss phase, and we'll see that done in the example fight at the end of this breakdown. Moving on to phases 2 and 3 then, once you strip away the boss's first health bar, he will then transform and go Super Saiyan, levitating while surrounded by Dragon Balls, and each of these balls represents a new attack he gains in this form. The first of these is the Soundwave attack, similar to the Serpent bosses, though this one is easily avoided by staying close to him and dodging through it. The second sees him drawing the balls in towards him before shooting them outwards, after which 3 of them release a pulse of energy, and the easiest way to defend against this attack is to simply stand below the boss and raise your shield. This attack will break your guard, but the outer balls will not damage you and you can quickly get a few attacks in, and it is worth noting that this attack can also be parried, allowing you to counterattack for some decent damage. For the boss's third attack, he will stab a sword into the ground, causing the floor to tear apart, and you're going to want to jump to avoid taking the initial damage from this. A few seconds later, beams of light will shine from beneath the floor, and huge swords will shoot out, so you have to quickly find a safe spot between the lights. Now it's worth noting that this attack also comes in 2 versions, one where the swords will pop out in set locations, and another where the beams of light will chase you, so you're going to need to keep on the move and do some quick dodges if you get the second version. The boss's next attack takes the form of a massive fist which slams into the ground, and a second later the floor will rip up beneath you. A double jump and air combo will allow you to avoid this attack, providing you don't get hit by the fist in the first place. The boss's final standard attack sees him swiping at the air with a staff, which is easily avoided with a dodge, and this is then followed by 3 golden spears which slam into the floor on your location. These spears can be tough to avoid, but you really don't want to get hit by the third spear as it completely freezes your character and you won't be able to break free until the boss hits you with another attack. Now the boss has 2 final super attacks which you can use at any point in his second or third phases. The first of these sees him return to the centre of the arena before releasing a combination of attacks, first sending up swords from the ground, followed by a pair of crossed golden spears, before finally calling in the huge golden fist from the sky to perform a ground pound. Avoiding this isn't too difficult, and you really just need to dodge the spears before performing an air combo to avoid the fist attack. Now his second ultimate attack is similar to the Emperor's flash attack. The boss will charge this attack for a couple of seconds and then release a blinding light with a large area of effect, and it's likely that you won't have time to get out of the way of this attack, so it's best to save a heal for them. Now this final boss has more health than any other boss, so using your wombo combo when he's down to his last health bar will likely leave him with about a quarter of his health, and you're just going to have to smash him with a few more hits to rinse his final HP and send him back to wherever he came from. And with that, congratulations, you've just beaten Bladed Fury and taken down all 12 of its bosses. So let's take one final look at an example of the end boss fight. Well, I'm hoping that you found this complete breakdown of Bladed Fury's bosses helpful and it got you through anything you were struggling with. If it did, show your appreciation by hitting that like button, let me know what you found most difficult about the game in the comments section below, and consider subscribing to the channel as I upload new reviews and Switch related content every couple of days. For now though, I just want to thank you all once again for watching, and until next time, take care of yourselves and game on.